Hi everybody, today I want to do a short video on Jesus teaching. Haven't done any of these, but I hope it will help some folks. I'm getting some insight into what he was about that's taking me to a new place. So let me share that. It may be helpful for you or not. So the main thing it's a very simple idea, and then I'll explain how I got to this. But it is that Jesus was not trying to teach us things to make us feel guilty for not being perfect. Okay, so I'll just put that again, like Jesus' teachings are not to make us feel guilty because we're not perfect. Okay, so now to get to that conclusion, I'll just use a couple of things, and this is just presenting the idea. Maybe I'll do additional videos over time to give you more background on this. But just remember that's what I'm trying to get to. Now, we don't have Jesus' actual sayings, right? We have reports of what Jesus said, and we don't know what the situation was. We don't know the context where he said this, and I'm just using he pronouns for him. I don't know what pronouns he would have chosen, but that's what I'm using here. And so the question is how can we get to what he was intending? And it's very difficult. There's massive volumes of by brilliant people trying to understand it, and even the early believers, when they wrote down the sayings, it was a few decades later, and they would supply some context that may or may not have been correct. And here we are 2,000 years later, and we might not even understand that what they supplied. So, but I think that there's a really, and this is the next thing, this is another point in this video I'm trying to get to, beyond the intent of Jesus, is that I've come to this insight that Jesus' teachings are really not intended to convey a truth that you have to accept, like a doctrine, like, oh, there is one God in three persons or something, and you have to accept it or not accept it. No, instead, his sayings were to stimulate thought and to stimulate belief. He was trying to get you to think in a new way and to ask questions and come to your own conclusions. So I want to make a parallel with Zen koans. Koans in the Japanese, in one of the Japanese Zen traditions, are sayings that a master will give to a student, and the student has to meditate on that saying and meditate on it until they it kind of expands their horizons and hopefully even gets them into the enlightenment. So sayings like, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" Or we often hear of the one, "If a tree falls in the forest, but there's no one there to hear it, was there any sound?" So this is not just a joke. This is something that the student has to really struggle with and think about, and it's worth it to think about. And I think that Jesus' sayings are very, very similar, and I think he actually had two types of teachings. One type was for the general public, when he would be out and he would teach in parables, and it says in the Bible, he didn't always explain these parables. Many scholars tell us that parables were meant to be easily understood, and but the Bible itself in the Gospel of Mark says, well, they might not understand these parables at all. So whoever you want to go with on that. But also he had a teaching, I think, for a narrow group. And I think those teachings are represented in the Gospel of Thomas that wasn't added to the Bible, but goes back to Jesus to some extent. And also the source called Q, which was available to some of the Gospel writers. And these are just sayings. They don't even try, these documents don't try to provide you any context. It's just a saying, which is, again, getting back to this idea that these were koans, like koans. So you're supposed to struggle with it, not to take it as just face value. Oh, okay, the sky is blue. Oh, okay, I'll move on to the next thing. No, it's something that is kind of disturbing, and you have to work with it, and different people will come up with different answers based on their own experience, their own situation. So that is why I think Jesus has been able, his teachings have been able to apply to so many different cultures and times, because he didn't specify. He was trying to get you to struggle with the issue. And on top of that, apparently he thought the kingdom of God was coming, and that's a whole different topic. I can't go into that right now. But we have these sayings. We've got the New Testament, which has sayings that a lot of times are very puzzling for us. And I'm saying it's good that they're puzzling. If you find these sayings puzzling, that's good. What I don't think, I'm getting very clear on this more and more, I don't think Jesus was trying to give you a law and say, this is it. Do not get divorced. I don't think he said don't get divorced. He was asking you to think about what are your motives, where are you coming from with this? Is this from God? So today I want to look at, just as an example of all of this, I would like to look briefly at the saying about adultery. And you'll find that, and I'll put it in the description. I'll put a translation in the description, and I'll put this reference in the description. It's to Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 and 20, and also verse 28. So this is in the famous Sermon on the Mount, and this is one of those sayings like, you have heard it said, but I say to you. So basically, this is the saying about adultery. Do not commit adultery, which is a direct quote from the Ten Commandments, and that's in Exodus, the book of Exodus. And just checking out here where that is, Exodus 20:14, and also it's in the book of Deuteronomy in another form, but it just says, do not commit adultery. So Jesus basically says, okay, you have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. It's not just that it was said, that's actually in the scripture. Then it says, but I say to you, whoever looks at a woman, and I'm translating from the ancient Greek here, but I'll give you a standard English translation in a minute. But basically it says, whoever looks at a woman with the intent to desire her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And I'm using the he, him pronouns because that's what's here, but of course it applies to everybody. That's just a grammatical nicety. Okay, so so the point is here, is he saying, oh gosh, so any person who ever looks at another person, if they're married and they look at someone and they have a thought of desire, or which is completely, then they've committed adultery in their heart, and that can't be his teaching, because Jesus knew, I'm sure, that it's completely human. So what good would his teaching be if it's like, don't be human, don't be human, or don't see what you see, um, no, it can't be that simple. If he's truly an enlightened master, he can't be saying that you're not ever going to have a thought about somebody that you happen to see, and also another thing that doesn't work for me is in the Greek it says if you look at the person with the intent, and that this is based on this preposition pros, with the I'm interpreting it, and that's sort of what it means. With pros means toward. So if you're looking at the person toward to desire, so toward with the purpose of desiring, so you go beyond just happening to look at the person. You're starting to really get into looking at the person and really thinking, fantasizing, whatever. Okay, so I can begin to understand that a little bit. If you're married, you shouldn't, but first of all, just right off the bat, it's that wipes out the idea that if you happen to see somebody and then find them attractive, that's not it. He's talking about toward the desire. So you look at the person and you react. That's not wrong. That's normal. But he's saying, like, if you go to the next step and you're like, oh, I'm going to really check out everything. I'm going to really whatever, look at the possibilities here, blah, blah, blah. Then you're getting into the new territory. But I would like to say here, though, even beyond that, though, like, is that even what he's saying either? Like, I mean, we can go there and, okay, so we kind of give the person help or whatever. Okay, it's okay that you happen to see somebody and found them attractive, but never do that or something. But that isn't really what he's trying to get at. And we don't have the context here. So the context is missing. So what do we do? And I'm thinking, and here I'm supplying context, is that he was trying to talk to people who considered themselves to be good Jews. They were or in our time would be like good Christians. I'm a born again Christian. I'm a good Christian. I believe all the things. I'm a believer. I'm not an unbeliever. I do this and that, or whatever your thing is. Or you could be a Jew today, or you could be a Hindu, whatever. And it's like, yeah, I do what I'm supposed to do. I'm good. And this is the one thing I think is pretty clear in Jesus' many sayings. Really, are you really that good? Are you really, really that good? Are you, and this is where Jesus really makes this distinction, is like, are you putting yourself over other people and saying, I'm good, and therefore these other people are not good? So I'm one of the people who doesn't commit adultery. Oh, so the other people, they're not so good because they, that Joe or Sally or somebody committed adultery. So you're up here and they're down here, really. So this idea that oh, I'm better, that I think is what Jesus is getting to. He's not even concerned about the adultery issue. He's concerned about the issue of people thinking they're better than other people. And once you do that, you no longer have compassion, or you don't have compassion for the person. Compassion is an equal thing. Pity is where you're like looking down on that other person and saying, oh, poor so-and-so, or thank you, God, that I'm not like them, right? But compassion, which even the Buddhists are talking, when the Buddhists talk about, is I have compassion on this being because I am a being like they are a being, and I have desire to be happiness the way they have desire to be happiness, and I can help them as they can help me. So this is what Jesus was getting to, I think, was not even concerned about making any law about, oh, stay married or don't stay married, or don't look at women or men, or don't lust after this and that. it really, that wasn't, he wasn't like thinking God is some like police person over us and looking at, oh, I see that that person looked at that married person, looked at that other person and had a bad thought about it. You know, I, I have, that's so utterly petty. And Jesus' view of God isn't like that. So it can't be his teaching. Okay, so let me just sort of summarize a little better to complete this, because this, I can't get into all the details, and I don't want to. I could easily go even into more detail. This saying and other sayings of Jesus are not like laws to say, don't do this, don't do that. And he is not trying to say, hey, Moses had a law, and now I'm giving you an even worse law to follow, even harder to follow than Moses. No, he isn't trying to say, okay, here's what the laws should be for adultery, or here's what we should do or not do, or whatever. He was talking here, it says, about in your heart. In your heart. That's what he was asking people. What's in your heart? You know, and it's in your heart. What's in your heart? Even, of course, not just saying, because he knows that pretty much everyone who hears this has had lustful thoughts. So that can't be what's in our heart that he's concerned about. He knows that. That's human. So what he means is, when he, with this word heart, and we know from the Hebrew tradition, heart means more than just feeling. It's your thoughts. It's everything. And I won't go into other aspects here, but that other saying about, you know, how do we summarize the law and the prophets? And it is, love God with all that you are, and all the parts of whatever the human is, and then also love your neighbor as yourself. So this is what needs to be in our heart, in all of our being, is, and of course it's not. So again, we get back to that. He's saying, you are not perfect. I am not perfect. Accept it. I mean, like that, that's the first step, because there is no love of neighbor, there is no love of God, there is no compassion if we're going to be under the illusion that we are perfect. That's the obstacle. That's the great obstacle to love, to interacting with God, with other people. And so that takes me back to the very beginning. Jesus was not teaching that we need to be perfect. Of course, we should strive toward it, right? We should aim toward that. And but the moment we think, I'm perfect, everything, it breaks the glass. It's broken glass. It won't work that way. And ultimately, we need to forgive. And that gets into the forgiving thing. Forgive ourselves, forgive others. Why would we need to forgive? Why would Jesus talk about forgiving if we are perfect? Right? So I think I've said it enough. I won't go, I don't think I should go into any more of it. So those are the two takeaways. Possibly one is that we don't have to be perfect. That isn't the point. And two, and that we shouldn't take Jesus' sayings literally, but rather they are to get us to springboards, to get us to think in a new way, in God's way. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll put those I'll put that information, the verse, in the description. Thank you.